Could Sukuna possess more than one vessel at the same time? Because we know he has 20 fingers out there, so if 20 different people all ate one, would there be 20 different Sukunas? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. All right, first of all, shout out to Sip for asking me about this today. And this is something I've actually been asked a lot because it is a really interesting thought experiment, right? What if there was more than one Sukuna vessel at a time? How would that work? And the first thing I want to say is that with JJK over, we obviously never saw this, so we can't say for sure how this would work, but we can point to some things and try to paint a picture. So the first thing I want to point out is that when a cursed spirit eats one of Sukuna's fingers, they don't become a vessel for him. They just become a finger bearer curse. So this curse is its own thing. It's not being influenced or piloted by Sukuna in any way. And in fact, he doesn't really have much of an awareness of what's going on with finger bearers at all. So it's not as if Sukuna is like an invisible passenger inside of these things the same way he is in Yuji. So there could be 20 cursed spirits all with one finger and it wouldn't be 20 Sukunas running around, right? This is only really relevant with human vessels. So when it comes to human vessels, the reason we never saw multiple Sukunas running around is because they're incredibly rare, right? This is probably part of the reason 20 fingers were created in the first place, to cast a wider net in terms of finding a suitable vessel. And we know that they are so rare, in fact, that Kenjaku will ultimately take it into his own hands to create a vessel for Sukuna. So I think that just largely never two vessels were around at the same time for this to even happen. Now, before anyone says anything, yes, we did have a time with two concurrent vessels in terms of Yuji and Megami, but this wouldn't have even been an option Sukuna considered in terms of splitting himself because Yuji is a prison, so he didn't want to leave any piece of them in Yuji. But what if he had, right? What if he had only transferred, let's say, like half of the fingers to Megami? Would there have then been two Sukunas running around? Like I already mentioned, there's no way for us to know, but I would guess that there probably could be multiple Sukunas running around if there were suitable vessels. And the reason I lean more towards that as opposed to away from it is because of this Q&A from Gege Akutami, where he was asked, I wonder if Sukuna's vision is connected not only with Itadori, but also with the cursed spirits that ate his finger. And remember earlier we talked about the finger bearer curses and how Sukuna is not in control of those. And Akutami says, almost no information can be extracted from the fingers that are sealed or eaten by cursed spirits. He can only sense them nearby. If the fingers are not sealed, though, he can somehow understand the situation around it. That's why he said good to Megami, who was fighting at the bridge against the special great curse spirit. This is why Sukuna congratulates Megami after he does that open domain expansion. So that proves that there is somewhat of a fractured awareness around the other fingers, meaning Sukuna, even when he was in Yuji, could sense the surroundings of an unsealed finger, which at least speaks to me that, theoretically, if there was another vessel out there, that he would probably have a split awareness of what was happening there too. Can you imagine 20 different Sukunas all running around at the same time wreaking havoc? Because honestly, a one-finger Sukuna is enough to handle the vast majority of the verse. And honestly, each of those 20 vessels would probably have the one-time incarnation available to them, which means there could be 20 true form Sukunas all running around. Now, we don't know the full rules about how that works, like maybe Sukuna needed all of his fingers to do that, but who knows? In any case, this would have been cool to see, but obviously it just wasn't going to happen in the story with how exceedingly rare actual vessels are. But again, for my money, I think that Sukuna would theoretically be able to do this. I think he would be able to fracture his perspective in that way. But y'all let me know your thoughts. And then speaking of Sukuna's fingers, I actually got a couple of questions about them from Lucas here, starting with, how do I think these 20 fingers actually moved across Japan? And something that Lucas suggests is what I agree with. He thinks that probably Uraume and Kenjaku first started dealing with them and perhaps dispersing them. And I agree, because we do know that Uraume is the one who tended to Sukuna's mummified body after he became cursed objects, up until the point that they presumably became a cursed object. And we know that the body was then kind of lost to time for a while, up until the point where it was rediscovered and then worshipped as like a Buddha, which is quite ironic and Sukuna got a kick out of, right? So I would assume that originally Uraume probably cared for a lot of them, but potentially Kenjaku did as well in order to disperse them across Japan, again to cast the widest net possible in terms of finding a vessel. But maybe they didn't even intentionally like travel to the four corners of Japan. Maybe they just decided to let the natural course of things take place, because we know that cursed spirits are attracted to these things, and some would go on to become finger bearer curses. Now, it is true that those really don't stray far from where they would have incarnated, but curses certainly could have picked these up and not ingested them, like not become a finger bearer curse and taken them to other locations. But even more so than that, humans probably would have moved these things. Non-sorcerers and sorcerers alike, especially sorcerers who are trying to seal them and get them out of harm's way, right? And over the course of 1,000 years, like they are just going to naturally be bouncing around all over the place. So I think it was mostly just kind of a natural progression that was set off by Kinjaku and Uraume. And then the follow-up to that was, what exactly was the plan anyway? Because no one in their right mind is going to ever eat a finger besides a cursed spirit, right? So how was this even meant to help find vessels? And that is a good point. So maybe it was like curse users that maybe understood something about this might try to like gain some of the power, but it also could have been just a contingency plan in general, right? Like have 20 so that when the time comes, be it through Kinjaku's direct action or Uraume's direct action, that they would be able to have some of these fingers to find them, to bring Sukuna back, and then, from there, try to collect the rest of them, since he's kind of a natural radar to the others. But yeah, I don't know. It would either take somebody crazy or just like a weird circumstance set of events. But yeah, I don't think most people would be inclined to try and eat these things. And then as a follow-up to that, Lucas was asking, do I think the reason Yuji ate one of the fingers could have been because of some instinctual level, like he knew that he was connected to this, I think the way Lucas puts it was because some sort of like curse hybrid that he was. And I personally don't think Yuji is a curse hybrid, not in the same way that the curse womb death paintings are, but I think Lucas was just referring to the fact that, Yuji was born with a finger sealed inside of him to ensure his strength as a vessel. So could that have at all kind of like enticed him or lured him to do this? And personally, I don't think so. Sure, there could be something like that to it, as maybe even a contingency plan like from Kinjaku, like if he could have at all like calculated that emotion or instinct into Yuji, that's up for debate, I guess. But in my opinion, I think the reason he ate it that we're presented with is serviceable enough, right? Like he's just a good guy. Like that's the type of person Yuji is. Even knowing the risk that this would pose to him, he didn't care, because he just wanted to do whatever he could to help Megami and, his friends, the students in that moment. So to me, it was just showing how empathetic and kind he is. And I don't think we need anything other than that. And then next up, Seto actually asked me if I thought Shibuya Yuji would be able to defeat this finger bearer curse. And honestly, I would say probably. Like Shibuya Yuji was hanging with Mahito at that point, the Black Flash merchant. So I think that he would be able to beat it, but I do think it would be a tough fight. Like I don't think it would be trivial for him, because we do know that it took Megami's incomplete domain and then sneak attack to end this thing. So Yuji certainly has the attack power to get it done, but again, I don't think it would be easy. And then finally today, I got a quick versus matchup from Satoru, which says Gojo versus true form Sukuna, so not the one pictured here, but no 10 shadows, no domains, and no infinity. So in that case, I'm going Sukuna, because Gojo is being nerfed way more than Sukuna, because neither have the domain. Sure, he doesn't have 10 shadows, sure, but that's not even his natural technique, right? So you're taking away one of the primary things Gojo has, and you're not really taking anything away from Sukuna at his core. And not giving him the 10 shadows kind of removes the reason he even needed it, because it was to get through the infinity, right? So I'm going Sukuna in those conditions. And then I lied, because I actually have one more question that just came through, and since it's related to what I was just talking about, I figured I'd throw it in. So shout out to CM, who says, I'm not sure if you've answered this already, but could Sukuna have won without the 10 shadows? And this is something I've actually talked about at length. I have a lot of videos talking about hypothetical Gojo versus Sukuna matchups, so if you just search that up on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find some. But the short version is, yes, could Sukuna beat him without the 10 shadows? He could, through domain amp and domain expansion. Would he? It's another question. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one, y'all. Thank you so much for the questions and for the support. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And if you'd like to see my head not get eaten, maybe consider following or subscribing if that tickles your fancy.